The next item of business is a debate on motion 18531 in the name of John Swinney on a motion of condolence following the death of George Reid. The Right Honourable Sir George Reid was held in high esteem by all, regardless of party, regardless of position. Elected Deputy Presiding Officer when the Parliament was established in 1999, George was then elected our second Presiding Officer in 2003, the only MSP to date to hold office as both a Deputy Presiding Officer and as Presiding Officer. George's dedication to public service and caring for others was demonstrated throughout his life. He loved representing the people of Clackmannanshire, both as an MP and an MSP. Dedicated to his local area, but internationalist in outlook, George's life, service and influence as a journalist, a humanitarian leader and as an elected representative reached far beyond these borders. George loved Scotland and the Scottish Parliament. He served the Parliament as he served in all his roles, with dignity, with dedication and with determination. He drove forward the completion of this building with tenacity and commitment, and he was immensely proud of it, and he delighted people being welcomed into their Parliament. As an MSP staff member, as an MSP and as Presiding Officer, he offered me friendly support. We are honoured today to welcome George's wife, Daphne, his daughter Morag and other members of his family to Parliament. We share your loss and we hope you find some comfort and encouragement in the many tributes to a life so very well lived. George's manner of service, a unique combination of courtesy, humour and seriousness, was his mark. We will miss him and we will remember him with deep affection and gratitude. First Minister.
Presiding Officer, I move the motion in my name. It is with enormous sadness, but also with the warmest of heartfelt thanks, that I rise to move the motion in my name to honour a true giant of my party, of this Parliament and of Scottish public life, Sir George Reid. I express my condolences and those of the people of Scotland to his wife Dee, to his daughter Morag, to his son-in-law Pete and to his grandchildren, and I welcome members of the family who join us in the gallery today. Born in Tullibody in the shadow of his beloved Ochil Hills, George was a proud son of the wee county, a passionate advocate for the people and the communities of Clackmannanshire, and destined to make a huge impact on the lives of others far beyond Clackmannanshires borders. George was a distinguished journalist, academic, parliamentarian, humanitarian and public servant. As the last surviving member of the trailblazing group of Scottish National Party MPs elected in 1974, George was so proud to have served his home county both at Westminster and here in the Scottish Parliament, an institution that he dedicated so much of his life to establish. While this Parliament reconvened in 1999, it truly came of age under George Reid's tenure as Presiding Officer. That stewardship reminded us that this Parliament and this country is at its best when we look outwards, not inwards. His finest speech in this Parliament was in the debate on the Iraq War in 2003, when he cautioned, and I quote, "The war has already claimed its first victim, which is the truth." Railing against that sentiment was not just something George thought or said or would have had others do. It was a value he put into practice throughout his life. His humanitarian and international outlook was at the heart of his life and work. He played a central role in the media coverage of the Ethiopian famine and worked tirelessly to provide assistance through the Red Cross and Red Crescent around the world. He used his remarkable knowledge, his experience and his intellect as Professorial Fellow at Stirling University, teaching on international conflict and cooperation for the learning of others. It was typical of George. Although an inspiring and captivating speaker, he was never content just to speak. He was always determined to act, to make a real difference, to use his huge intellect, his drive and his compassion for others to make the world a better place. And it was that determination he brought to bear so effectively here in this Parliament. Those of us who served during his time as presiding officer will remember the extraordinary leadership that he provided, putting aside party and working truly in the national interest, ending the early struggles and controversies and truly cementing our Parliament's place as the centre of the political life of the nation. When the history of this Parliament is written, the role played by George Reid will be at its heart. That was because George Reid was a true statesman, a man whose life's work was devoted to and has benefited the whole nation of Scotland. His unique and exemplary commitment to public service was recognised by his appointment by Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth as Lord High Commissioner to the General Assembly of the Church of Scotland and to the Order of the Thistle, one of the ancient symbols of our nationhood. George's political life was anchored in his drive to secure for Scotland her place as an outward-looking, equal and independent member of the family of nations. As a teenager, I heard his arguments for this cause. His advocacy and that of his peers, Winnie Ewing, Gordon Wilson and Margaret Ewing, for Scotland and for independence shaped the political convictions that I have held for my entire adult life. Throughout my parliamentary service, George Reid was a source of wise counsel and steadfast support. Leadership can be a lonely place, but for me I was always strengthened in exercising leadership by the encouragement and the deepest of loyalty of George Reid. And so it was when I visited George for the last time in July. Knowing that his life would soon come to an end, I listened to a wise man at peace with himself, as assured as any of us can ever be that he had led a fulfilled life of joy, of service and of love. I feel immensely privileged that my life was enhanced by knowing George Reid and benefiting from his counsel. I'd like to end this tribute by reflecting on a section of George's 1995 Donaldson Lecture, an exposition of values and political thought that stands as a defining contribution to the development of my party and of modern Scottish politics. In that lecture, George said, "Our future cannot be a continuation of our past. Too often, we Scots are concerned about the day before yesterday. Instead, he implores us to say with a sense of purpose, today is tomorrow." With those words, George encourages us to use today to secure the future, to think optimistically of what might be possible, to pursue a common determination to shape and improve Scotland's future. I commit today to doing that, and in so doing, I hope that can be the ongoing tribute of us all to the life and the legacy of Sir George Reid.
Thank you. I now call on Murdo Fraser.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I think I am the only member now on the Conservative benches here who served in this Parliament when Sir George was Presiding Officer, and it's my honour to offer a few remarks in support of this motion of condolence. I first met Sir George Reid when I came into this Parliament in 2001, and at that point he held the position of Deputy Presiding Officer. But I was aware of his history, he already having had a distinguished career both in journalism and broadcasting, as a Member of Parliament in Westminster, having more recently worked for the International Red Cross. In that first session of Parliament, he made relatively few speeches, but when he did contribute, as we've already heard, often on international matters on which he had considerable expertise, his contributions were always ones which carried a great deal of authority. And whether one agreed with him or not, he was always someone worth listening to. When Sir David Steele retired as presiding officer at the end of the first session, George was the natural successor to take over. And it was a role he was made for, with just the right level of gravitas and authority, but also with good humour, a twinkle in his eye and kindness towards individuals. That second parliamentary session he presided over became known as the Rainbow Parliament, containing as it did a motley assortment of smaller parties, including most notably a cluster of representatives from the Scottish Socialist Party. And this brought a level of both rhetoric and parliamentary disruption which had not been seen before or since, at least so far. As the occupant of the chair, George tolerated this with as much good grace as he could muster, although occasionally one could not but notice a wry smile on his lips in reaction to what he was hearing and seeing. His most significant contribution as presiding officer was to sort out the mess that this building's construction had become, at that point years behind schedule and hundreds of millions over budget. Simply by the force of his personality and with his leadership, he pulled the whole thing together to ensure the building was ready in time for the planned royal opening by the late Queen Elizabeth. It says in St Paul's Cathedral, in tribute to Sir Christopher Wren, if you look for his monument, look around you. And we can say that of this building here today. It is really a monument to Sir George Reid, and without his intervention, I fear construction works might still be going on. On retiring from Parliament in 2007, George went on to hold a number of significant roles. Unlike many in his party, he did not have an instinctive objection to the honour system and was pleased to accept the knighthood which was conferred on him by the late Queen Elizabeth, a fitting recognition of his years of public service. He went on to serve both as the Lord Lieutenant of his much-loved home county of Clackmannanshire and also as the Queen's representative as the Lord High Commissioner at the General Assembly of the Church of Scotland. And my wife and I were delighted to be hosted during the General Assembly that year by George and Dee at Holyrood Palace. For the duration of the General Assembly, the Lord High Commissioner is effectively treated as a member of the royal family, living in the palace, being waited on by retainers, wining and dining on the finest of fare every night, and being driven around in a large limousine with a royal pennant flying on the wing, accompanied by police motorcycle outriders. And I don't think I'm being unkind when I say I think George perhaps enjoyed that experience just a little bit too much. Presiding Officer, I will always remember George for his kindness and friendship to me personally, as well as his many achievements in public life. He will be sadly missed, and on behalf of the Scottish Conservatives, I offer my condolences to Dee and Morag and all the family.
Thank you. I now call on Anna Sarwar.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. On behalf of the Scottish Labour Party, I want to associate all my colleagues with the comments made by the First Minister, and I want to put on record our deep sorrow at the passing of Sir George Reid, a public servant of remarkable skill, intelligence and commitment. George Reid led a life dedicated to serving the people of our country and a life committed to making Scotland a better place. Many people in this chamber, particularly those on the SNP benches, will have warm memories of George's time in this Parliament, but not exclusively on the SNP benches. I know from lots of stories from those that served alongside Sir George how respected he was across every party in this chamber. George served diligently, including as Deputy Presiding Officer and later as Presiding Officer. But George's time in this Parliament was only one tiny part, actually, of a remarkable career. A remarkable life that took George far from his Clackmannanshire home to around the world, from America to Armenia, always in the service of others. And after graduating from the University of St Andrews, George embarked on a career in journalism, working for the BBC and Granada TV, as well as many of Scotland's flagship newspapers. A person of strong political convictions, it wasn't long before George made the move into frontline politics. George was a committed Scottish nationalist, joining the party as a young man when they had little support in the country, and later being elected as part of the SNP wave produced by the twin elections of 1974. He served his Clackmannanshire and East Stirlingshire constituents diligently across the turbulent years of the late 70s, whether that be the rise of the Tories under Margaret Thatcher or the winter of discontent. After leaving Parliament in 1979, George returned to journalism, and this time marrying his professional expertise with his vast experience of the world. Because, yes, George will be remembered as being a Scottish nationalist, but he was without a doubt an internationalist as well. A man who cared deeply for the freedom, safety and justice for all of his fellow citizens, wherever they were across the globe. And it was in this role he performed some of the most lasting and important work. As has already been mentioned, he produced the groundbreaking reports on the Ethiopian famine that awakened the world to the struggles and horrors being inflicted on the people of that country. And that moved so many people across the world that it led directly to Live Aid and the beginning of famine relief. After that, he worked for the International Red Cross in Geneva. His work on supporting victims of the 1988 Armenian earthquake saw George receive state honours from Armenia and the USSR. And when the campaign for devolution was won, George was ready to return to politics and to serve the people of Scotland. Now, I sadly did not have the honour of serving in this Parliament at the same time as George, but I did have the honour and privilege of meeting him on a number of occasions. And what I remember most about Sir George, Presiding Officer, is despite not being in the same party as me, he was nothing other than warm, compassionate and encouraging. And I know that was the case with many young people and maybe older people he met in politics across the years. Always warm, always compassionate, always encouraging. And I know this is the man that we will remember so fondly. And indeed, it is this George, intelligent, patriotic, compassionate and warm, that this Parliament and Scotland mourns today. In closing, Presiding Officer, I want to again share the condolences of the Scottish Labour Party on the death of Sir George Reid, and our thoughts are with Dee, Morag, his family, his many friends, and to the many colleagues who knew him and loved him so dearly.
Thank you. I now call on Mark Ruskell.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I join colleagues across the Parliament, members and staff, in mourning the loss of Sir George Reid and in celebrating his life. And we send our condolences and love to Dee, Morag and the family, and of course not forgetting the dogs. George led a remarkable life as a journalist, politician, humanitarian and academic. He was a true polymath, drawing on his unique breadth of experience to touch the lives of so many. And every chapter of his career left a lasting legacy. And he remains the only MSP to have received the Soviet Medal of Honor for his outstanding work with the International Red Cross, leading the response to the Armenian earthquake in 1988. Now, I first met him when I was a very nervous new MSP in 2003. We had lunch. I said how I'd voted for him to be my constituency MSP, and I would be voting for him again to become presiding officer of this Parliament. And he was so warm and generous, full of useful advice, offered kindly and sometimes very directly. He helped me make sense of those early days in Parliament, and I know so many other MSPs who also benefited from his mentoring. Later, when I lost my seat at Holyrood, I valued his encouragement, drawing again on his personal experience of moving between so many different roles, both in and out of politics. And I recently met his colleagues at Stirling University, where he worked right up until the final few weeks of his life, teaching, mentoring, challenging students, drawing on that vast experience. And I learned how his work helped them just as he had helped me and so many others. Now, we remember fondly how George could hold any gathering in the palm of his hand. He had a natural and formidable power of convenership, an essential skill in that rainbow parliament of the second session when shenanigans were rife. We remember how he chaired a major global conference in this Parliament, opening proceedings in not just one, but 2 African languages before addressing delegates in Gaelic, and then finally in English. It was classic George. His wit, charisma and gravitas could lift any gathering, however small, into a major event, making people feel special and connected to each other. And I remember attending dinners with international delegations that George hosted in his role as PO, and they were enthralling. He would pull every thread of conversation in the room together, ensuring no one was left behind. You had to sing for your supper, but you always left feeling part of something a wee bit special. Now, I've met so many staff in this building who loved working with George in his time as both an MSP and then as presiding officer. And arguably his greatest achievement in politics was in steering this building, this village, as he loved to call it, to its completion. George was the right person at the right time to navigate the huge challenges of getting the building project on track and communicating that to a critical media. And from the start, he brought his forensic attention to detail, demanding weekly updates of Gantt charts and critical paths, chivying contractors to completion while delivering endless walkthroughs and interviews in multiple languages, explaining the challenges and progress of the project. Colleagues remember a kind, shrewd, organised and tireless leader. We can only imagine what might have been if he'd been able to take a more central role in the Yes campaign for independence. Presiding Officer, we celebrate the unique and remarkable life of Sir George Reid, a proud son of the Wee County, much loved and now much missed.
Thank you. I now call Alex Cole-Hamilton.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. It is a tremendous privilege to be able to pay tribute to Sir George Reid on behalf of the Scottish Liberal Democrats. His passing marks the loss of one of the most substantial figures in the life of this Parliament and indeed the life of Scotland. I met George only a handful of times and only fleeting, but I was always in awe of him and he was always generous with that time. I saw from outside what this chamber meant to Sir George and, over time, what he would come to mean to this chamber. He was a man of great intellect, of deep compassion and integrity, and from those roots in Tullibody, he never lost his pride in Clackmannanshire. He never forgot where he came from and what was behind him, but he was always looking forward and outward as well, a profound internationalist. As we've heard, his career in journalism led him to the very heart of global events, and in the Red Cross, he found not just a vocation, but a calling. Working in places of conflict and of catastrophe, he brought humanity and hope where both were in short supply. He would later say that it was in that work that he did far more good than at any other time in his life. In politics, George made his mark twice, first at Westminster and here in Holyrood. And as presiding officer, in those years between 2003 and 2007, he took the chair, as we have heard several times this afternoon, at a very difficult time for this fledgling Parliament. The Holyrood project itself was mired in delay and in controversy. Yet Sir George always brought order, authority and dignity, determined, as he said, to move in and to move on, and he succeeded. By the time he laid down the mace that sits before you, Presiding Officer, this Parliament was not just complete as a building, but is established in the minds of the Scottish people as the beating heart of this nation's democracy. He was a man of principle, never afraid to speak truth plainly. And, as the First Minister rightly mentioned, his speech on the Iraq War, informed by his years of humanitarian service, is where I think one of the finest I've ever heard in this chamber, and I found such common cause with the words he spoke that day. Sir George was knighted in 2012 for his service to public life, but the honour that mattered most to him, as exemplified by his life's work, was the chance to serve his community, his country, and the cause of humanity. On behalf of my party, I extend our profound condolences to his wife Dee, to his daughter Morag, and to her family, and to all of those who mourn him today. Thank you.
Thank you. The question is that motion 18531 in the name of John Swinney on a motion of condolence be agreed. Are we all agreed? Yes. The motion is therefore agreed, and I will now allow a brief period of suspension before we move on to the next item.